This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, real MVPs? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And Brandon, it is a big week because it has been quite a while since we've done one of these, but we are finally back doing NFL Big Boards.
We're finally back doing a podcast.
Yes, that too, as we took a hiatus last week because I was a little bit under the weather.
I'm glad you're now above the weather.
I can't remember if we did a podcast before that.
No.
I think we might have. We may have not. But it's good.
It's been 2 weeks.
It's good to be back. And, NFL Big Board style. And this is the one where it's NFL Big Board. Then the next one we're going to have will be after the NFL Combine. So we kind of get to talk about these guys. Then we get to see them in their underwear kind of run through. Hopefully we don't have another situation like, oh, who was it? I remember he was from either South Carolina or Mississippi State, but it was like the late round guy who was doing the 40-yard dash that had his junk come out at the Combine. Hopefully we don't have another one of those mishaps at the Combine. Then we get to talk about them after they run around in their underwear, and I think we got one more after that. I'm going to look it up. Yes, we do. So we'll have this one after they run around in their underwear, and then the fifth one right before the draft.
I feel like you're a little too excited to watch grown men run around in their underwear.
Come on, that's what it looks like. The uniforms are so skin tight to where it's like they're basically in their undies. Running around doing their 40-yard dashes, their football drills, and Kyler Murray will be there.
Kyler Murray will be there.
As he made his decision, he said bye-bye to the Oakland A's, and now he's going to go to the Oakland Raiders, potentially in the NFL.
Poor guy. Fun. I'd rather go to the A's.
Yeah, I'd rather go to the A's too. But how we do it for our big board, top 25, we split it into three. We do 16 through 25. We do then 6 through 15, if my math is right. And then we save the top 5 for last. Before I ask Brandon to give me his 16 through 25, make sure to check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. If you want to join a podcast, join us at the $10 tier. You support us at that $10 tier. You can join a podcast each and every month. You are at that tier. But Brandon, let's get started and let's do the honors. I'll let you go first. 16 through 25, who you got?
So at 25, starting things off, DeAndre Baker, the cornerback from Georgia. At 24, A.J. Brown, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. 23, Alabama running back Damian Harris. At 22, Nasir Adderley, safety from Delaware. At 21, Ja'Kai Polite, defensive end from Florida. At 20, Rashawn Gary, D lineman from Michigan. At 19, Montez Sweat, the defensive end from Mississippi State. At 18, David Montgomery, the running back from Iowa State. 17, Noah Fant, Iowa tight end. And at 16, I stuck him in there again because I just, can't not put him in there. Will Grier, the quarterback from West Virginia.
And you put him kind of high at 16. A little bit high for some people's liking, but I know you're a Will Grier guy. And
I am. Screw off, other people.
When we talked about Will Grier, you were very, very pro Will Grier, especially when we were talking about Jones and Locke, but we'll have that conversation again today.
And I was just going to say, if Will Grier can find the right system, and I'll mention this when we talk them, if he finds the right system, if he's put into the right system, he'll be okay. And I know that some people will say, well, that's a weakness. If he's got to be a system guy, then that's going to be a weakness. But if he finds that right system, he'll end up being, I think, a really strong quarterback.
Well, and then going into mine, starting it off at number 25, the safety from Mississippi State, Jonathan Abrams. Then at number 24, Brian Burns, the pass rusher, basically, outside linebacker, defensive end from the Florida State Seminoles. Then at number 23, he took quite a fall for me, but that's what happens when you get popped for PEDs. You fall from 8 all the way to 23. Dexter Lawrence, the defensive tackle from the Clemson Tigres. Then at number 22, we got Josh Jacobs, the running back from Bama, making his first appearance on a big board. Then at 21, Drew Lock, the quarterback from the Missouri Tigers, coming on in there. Then at number 20, DK Metcalf, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. Then I'm just going to continue the SEC all the way through this. We've got Ja'Kai Polite at 19, the defensive end from the Florida Gators. Then his teammate, Juwan Taylor, the offensive tackle from the Florida Gators. Then at number 17, Montez Sweat, the defensive end from Mississippi State. And then at 16, his teammate, Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle from Mississippi State. And the first thing I want to talk about, Brandon, is some good old running backs. And this is a position that every single big board, I believe you've had a running back in your big board. Yes, you had, I'm looking here, you had Damian Harris, Justice Hill, and David Montgomery. So you had three in
that was
your
in the first one, yeah.
Then in your second, you just had Montgomery and Harris, I believe, maybe just Harris.
I think it was just Montgomery.
It was just Montgomery. And then this one, Harris creeped back in. So you've gone from 3 to 1 to 3. I have not been that. Damian Harris has only been the guy. I am being persuaded, though, after watching film of Josh Jacobs, I really like what I see of the running back that is probably second in most people's minds behind Damian Harris, but I really like what I'm seeing from Josh Jacobs in his film.
Yeah, you have to love what you see from Josh Jacobs, and I'm not saying that just because I am an Alabama fan, but I'm saying that because they did an excellent job, and now I know that this is where it could get a little tricky when you're looking for who's the best running back on Alabama, because in years past, certainly, what was it for Damian Harris? It was last season where he had 135 carries for 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. And then the year before that, he had 146 carries for over 1,000 yards, only 2 touchdowns on the ground, 4 total, but still over 1,000 yards. This year, 876, 9 touchdowns. But you look at Josh Jacobs, what he did. He came in with 120 touches on the ground and 20 catches in the receiving game, 640 yards, 11 touchdowns there. He really came on, and they worked this committee, which in Alabama's past, they've had some committees, but they've also had, some guys. When they had Derrick Henry, there was no need for really any committee. Every once in a while, they'd get in Harris a little bit. They'd get in Najee Harris. For a little quicker back as opposed to the ground and pound right up the middle. But that's kind of where we're at right now with Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris. And Josh Jacobs seems to be, at least to me, a little bit more of a shiftier back for Alabama, coming out of Alabama, whereas Damian Harris is a little bit more of your kind of run it up the middle, little to the left, little to the right. But Jacobs brings you a little bit of a shiftiness. I'm not going to say one of them is a better pass catcher than the other because they really didn't catch a ton of passes. I think maybe 40-some combined between the two. But I really like Damian Harris, have for a while. But the one that was not mentioned in your talk there is Montgomery. And I like Montgomery as a lesser version. I've said this before, so for those of you that continue to follow the Primetime Podcast and our big boards for the NFL, is David Montgomery, for me, is a lesser version, still quality, but a lesser version of Saquon Barkley. Some of the big thighs, really can move out there, not as fast, still powerful, can make some really good cuts. Those are the types of things that if you watch their film, you'll say Saquon is Saquon and David Montgomery is David Montgomery, but I think that you could also see some crossover and some similarities in the way that they play. Now,
the thing for me, there's one trait that comes down to why I was impressed so much by Jacobs' film over a Montgomery and maybe over a Damian Harris. If I were to rank them right now, just running backs, I would say that I'd have Jacobs number 1, Harris number 2. I would have Montgomery at 3. And the reason why I say that, for me, running back, it comes down to vision. And when you're watching Josh Jacobs, he's not going to be the guy that tries to power through. He's going to be that guy. It kind of almost reminds me of like what we used to say about Ray Rice when he was coming in to the league, where it was like he'll get the ball, he'll kind of almost slowly, like it's almost slow motion, how he goes up to the line, finds the gap, and then just kind of slips right through it. And he's also a guy that can hit you with like a jab step and a little juke, and he can make you miss. And those moves are what I like. The shiftiness, the vision, most importantly, because you can go ahead and ram through the line, but I'd rather have a guy that, hey, I'm going to pick my hole, find the hole, and be able to get you about 4 or 5 yards each and every time that I'm giving you the ball. Damian Harris, to me, is the one that kind of falls into a typecast where he is going to be fine only because he reminds me of Mark Ingram, and Mark Ingram's got a job. There is a definite kind of hole for or a fit for somebody that can just say, hey, give me the ball, I'm going to pound it up the middle, and I'm going to get you yardage. But David Montgomery right now, and it's not something that, hey, you can't fix and you're basically dead in the water. He can fix it. But the thing I see from David Montgomery is when you said the Saquon Barkley, I'm like, all right, I didn't see it at first. But now after, like right now, I'm even watching the film, I see it. But the thing that made Saquon so much better is we never had to question Saquon's vision. Saquon never had that problem of not being able to find the hole, where sometimes when I watch David Montgomery, it's like he gets the ball and he's kind of like happy feet back there where it's like, oh, where is it? Where is it? Okay, I'm tackled. Whereas then sometimes, oh, here's the hole. I don't have to think about it too much, and I find a big game. So, I mean, if David Montgomery can fix that, then I think he'll be really good. But right now, that's why I really like Jacobs, and I'm kind of low on Montgomery.
I think in these situations, whenever we do these big boards, I always feel like
we're all different.
I always feel like you're a much more difficult grader than I am. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, the guy really plays well. he can really cut down the field. I think you're just a little bit more of the critical one, whereas I just see the talent and it excites me. So that's where we come with two kind of different styles of doing it, which I appreciate.
And the thing, it kind of reminds me of like when you look at Todd McShay's big board and then Mel Kiper, just the quarterbacks alone. Mel has both of the Haskins and Murray top 10 guys. They're up here. Todd McShay's like, they're 11 and 13. They're outside the top 10. They're not up there. Where there was one where it's like Mel Kiper had this guy, oh, he's a top 10 prospect. Todd McShay, maybe top 20. He's between 15 and 20 over here. So, I mean, I do like the differencing in opinions, but the true question I'm going to ask you, and this is going to change over time, is of course a big board is different than a mock draft. Just because I have Jacobs at 22 doesn't mean he's going to be the 22nd overall pick. I want to ask you before we move on to the quarterbacks, will any of these three guys, Harris, Montgomery, Jacobs, be selected in the first round? Will there be a team that takes a running back in the first round?
Yeah, I think we'll have one. I think we'll have one team that takes a running back in the first round. I don't know. I can't specifically pick out who that team is, but I also don't think that we're going to have more than one running back because of the fact that there are so many defensive players, so many good, solid defensive players out there that teams are going to want to gobble up, which, again, defensive players don't always necessarily excite me because I'm more of an offensive-minded guy. Yep. You put Madden in front of me, I don't give a crap about defense. I give a crap about that offense, though.
Just to kind of...
But I was going to say, I think that there's just too many good defensive players this year to pass up, and a couple of quarterbacks that teams will want to go after. I mean, I was looking at ESPN today, looking at some
teams will want to trade up for to get that fifth option on.
And I was looking at some options for teams that are quarterback needy, and just kind of looking at different scenarios of guys that are free agents right now and what could happen, and if it does, if it doesn't. I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for teams. I keep saying guys, for teams to go get quarterbacks, and not that tons will go in the first round, but I could certainly see 3 quarterbacks going in that first round too.
Well, one team, before we get into those quarterbacks, look at the Eagles. They could be a team at 25 that goes ahead and takes a running back, especially to the injury that Jay Ajayi had this season. But let's talk about those quarterbacks that you mentioned. So there's three of them. There's Daniel Jones, there's Drew Lock, and there's Will Grier. And I'll be honest, the only reason Will Grier is thrown into the conversation here is because Brandon here is so high on him. And Mark and I had talked on the onside kick after the Senior Bowl, is Daniel Jones or Drew Lock going to kind of get into the first round, with Will Grier kind of being there too as like the last one rounding out the top five, because it's these three plus the two we're going to talk about later. In your mind, you said one of these guys. So if three quarterbacks, we're thinking Kyler Murray, we're thinking Dwayne Haskins. Out of these three, I'll ask you this. Make your case to why you think Will Grier will be that third quarterback, and not a Drew Lock and not a Daniel Jones, who both had good performances at the Senior Bowl.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, and I don't have him in my big board, and that doesn't mean that I don't like him, but I think that out of the three of them, and I know that people may think, well, that doesn't make sense. You have Will Grier in there, but you don't have this other guy in here. But the guy who might go out of the three of them is Drew Lock.
Yep.
And the reason that I say that, so there are people out there who say that he looks a lot like Pat Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech. Big arm, can extend plays, mobile in the pocket, can fit the ball into tight windows. They're going to see that, and the reason I'm saying this is because they've seen what Pat Mahomes did with a full season. They saw what Pat Mahomes can be, will be, and I think Pat Mahomes may have even convinced you too, Ricky, that he's the real deal. But I think they're going to look at that. Teams are going to look at that. They're going to see what Mahomes did. They're going to see some of the similarities. They're going to see the big arm. They're going to see, I think, a little bit. They're going to go with a guy who might be a safer option than Will Grier. Because, yes, there's some things that Will Grier maybe needs to work on, and there's also that he'll be really good if he gets the right system, like I said before. But I think Drew Lock could be good no matter what system he is in. I still really like Will Grier, of course, but I think that is why teams would be looking at Drew Lock and saying, especially out of those three, saying, well, this guy, he's the safest. He has similarities to Pat Mahomes. We saw what Pat Mahomes could do in the NFL. We want to go and get this guy.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because one of the things that I believe it was Drew Lock that I said this about when we were doing the onside kick and talked about Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, was the thing that makes me kind of a little weary in his film is Drew Lock's kind of footwork. He gets a little bit of happy feet under pressure, but you threw out the Patrick Mahomes comparison, and now I'm watching his film going, well, I mean, Patrick Mahomes doesn't have perfect footwork, and he slings the ball with his left hand sometimes and doesn't even throw usually with his left hand. But that's a comparison that is almost like, I'm going to say it's almost like the LeBron James comparison in basketball, of like, Patrick Mahomes is his unique kind of box, and he really just blew the doors off of all the expectations for it. But I do see a little bit of that in Drew Lock's game. And for me, the biggest thing that I like about Drew Lock and why I have him in my big board is his arm strength. Give me a guy who I don't have to worry about you underthrowing passes, because I can teach you at the next level. I can fix your mechanics. I can fix your footwork. I can fix your pocket awareness. The one thing I cannot do as a coach is I can't get you more strength in your arm. If you're a guy who's going to be short-arming passes and doesn't have a strong arm, I can't do anything for you there. It's either hitting more weights to make that arm stronger, or you're just capped out with, hey, this is as hard as I can throw the ball, because everyone is different with how fast and how far they can throw. But everything else that I see, I can help and fix you if I'm Drew Lock. The thing that I feel like, for me, the guy out of these three that I'm the most, I'm going to say, I hope I'm using this word right, I'm the most skeptical of him, is Daniel Jones. where if I had to rank them, he'd be 4, just above Will Grier, because I do believe, I believe what you said. Will Grier, one of his, I'm going to say, problems is he's got to find the right system. Like, if he ends up in a bad situation, well, that's going to set him behind the 8 ball, and he's not going to, it's going to be like, and I don't mean to make this comparison as like a negative thing, but it's like Tim Tebow. If he ends in a Denver Bronco, like how Tebow ended with the Broncos, and it was just a horrible situation for Timmy, then Will Grier might not, like, he might have to overcome that before he can overcome the issues that he has. To me, it's Daniel Jones that's the biggest question mark for me, because I look at him and it's like, yes, he's a big body, he's got a strong arm, but I look at what he's done at Duke, and I know there was a commenter on the onside kick that's like, hey, you got to look at it and say it's sometimes, like most of the time it was our receiver's fault at Duke, and it's like, that's great. You can say that the receivers dropped some passes and didn't make plays here or there, but I'm a little concerned when, and I said this on the onside kick, when I look at a scouting report like the one I'm looking at, and it says in 23 or more passing attempts as a sophomore, Jones's completion percentage dipped from a 62.8 to a 56.7. I know that was a sophomore year, not his junior year, but that concerns me if I'm a scout looking at Daniel Jones, especially when I've got guys like Will Grier and Drew Lock also right next to you in that range.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely understand that. I'm skeptical a bit of Daniel Jones. That's why I don't have him near the big board. Drew Lock would have been much closer to cracking the top 25 in this big board. Again, this is, I put these guys in sometime last week. If I would have taken a little bit more of a look before we got things started this week, I may have looked at Lock again. And I've liked him. I've liked Lock. I think that he's a solid quarterback. I had him in there at 19 in my first big board, and I change up the big board literally just going based off of what's been happening lately and how I feel that day. That's really all that it is. But he has got a great arm. And the similarities that you can see from Pat Mahomes coming out of college. Drew Lock coming out of college. Drew Lock and Pat Mahomes coming out of college. You can see those similarities in terms of that big arm, being able to stretch the ball down the field. He extends plays so well, and that is one of the biggest things as a quarterback. One of the problems that I think you see from teams that are quarterback needy, one of them being the New York Giants, Eli Manning has been a really good quarterback. But one thing that Eli Manning doesn't do well, he does not extend plays well. If the pocket breaks down, it's going to be a sack. Yeah. Hopefully just not a strip fumble. So you need guys who are going to keep plays alive, who sometimes have those happy feet to be able to run around, move away from defenders, escape the pressure, move far out of the pocket and get off a pass, or at least be able to then throw it away instead of taking a 7-10 yard sack. So that doesn't always worry me with the footwork of being a little bit of happy feet. As long as you're always like thinking, what can I do next? What can I do next? If this reads, okay, this reads not here, this reads not here, this reads not here, okay, I need to now move. That is better than just being caught flat-footed and going down for the sack. So that doesn't necessarily worry me. But Daniel Jones, I think he's also one of the kind of less known guys only because of his time at Duke. Duke hadn't been an outstanding, football program by any means, but he didn't seem to me to make any big splashes. That's why he's just farther down on the list than any of the other ones. Well,
and I say, like I said, big body and arm strength. The thing that hurt him, though, in my mind at the Senior Bowl, and this is the last thing I'll say about him before we move in to the last thing for this topic, is this is what McShay had written about him at the Senior Bowl. This is Daniel Jones. It says, Jones has just an average arm and struggled to make some throws in the wind when he was late. At one point, he had back-to-back INTs during 7-on-7s. On the first one, he locked onto his primary too long and tried to force a throw to the flat too late. Still, he did show very good touch on immediate timing throws. He doesn't get great zip on the ball, but he certainly has a good feel for trajectory. And that's going to be something where, can you live without that arm strength when we're living in an era where, look at the arm strength of Patrick Mahomes. Look at the arm strength of all these big-time quarterbacks that we see. We're really, the big thing that we're looking at with like a guy like Tom Brady is, he doesn't have a big zip on the ball anymore, but yeah, he's 40. That's what happens when you get older, but still, in a prime situation within that offense to be successful, the big thing with all three of these guys, can they find the right situation, the right coach to make them successful at the next level? And then the last one, this one might be a shorter conversation, but I wanted to throw it out anyways because I saw this on, it was Mel Kiper's big board, because Mel Kiper had TJ Hawkinson as the tight end on his big board. No Noah Fant. And the thing that he said was, you look at Iowa's stats, Noah Fant's the athletic guy. He's the guy that has the big name. Hawkinson's the guy that actually had better stats last year than Noah Fant. I will ask you, Brandon, you are an NFL scout, you are an NFL GM. What would you lean towards more? The guy who has more production from college, or the guy who just might be a better athlete overall?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't know who that Hawkinson guy is until you literally said it earlier today.
Everything out of Iowa has been Noah Fant, Noah Fant.
I would have honestly had no idea. But Noah Fant, there's no way you can get past how great of an athlete this guy is. He is incredible. His versatility is great. There's really no limit for him. He's a tight end by nature, but he can be a wide receiver. He can be the guy that Travis Kelce's called upon to be as a wide receiver. The guy that George Kittle's called upon to be as a wide receiver. Both of those guys, extremely talented, extremely versatile in the way that they play their game. Very tough. You know, Fant is like 6'4", 230. That's a very good size tight end and wide receiver for your team. He's just I think a freak athlete from that tight end position. Can run a number of routes, very diverse there. Has great hands. Can make adjustments with the football. He'll beat a lot of defenders on going up to high point the ball as well. Would be in large disagreement with anyone who said that Hawkinson is better than him. And like I said, don't really know anything about Hawkinson. I just know that Noah Fant is a very good athlete and should continue to be very successful at the NFL level.
Well, and here's the thing that's going to, for me, decipher between the two is what kind of an offense are you running? That's going to be the one that kind of makes this decision for you. Because if you look at it, Hawkinson is about 1 inch taller than Noah Fant. Whoop-de-doo, you're 1 inch taller. Pretty much still at eye level. And he's about 10 to 11 pounds bigger. Hopefully that's muscle. I don't know. I don't know Hawkinson personally. But the biggest thing with them is, what kind of an offense do you run? Because with most of the scouting reports and when you watch the film, you look at Noah Fant, he's a run after the catch guy. He's got that run after catch ability. His probably the worst is going to be his power in the play action in those type of situations. Whereas you've got Hawkinson, who the best thing is he's versatile. You can throw him in almost any situation and he can produce for you. However, he doesn't have that deep speed. Like, he's not a guy that's going to blow you away basically with his athleticism like a Noah Fant would. So if you're looking for a Travis Kelce, you're looking for someone, let's say you have the Chiefs kind of an offense, you're going to want Noah Fant over a TJ Hawkinson. But if you're, let's say, I'm going to even say like the Bears would probably go with a Fant. I'm trying to think of like maybe like a Packers offense, or if you're trying to do maybe like a Patriot offense, Patriots, I would even say go Fant, because Gronk is kind of an athletic guy.
So you're trying to name offenses that don't hardly use the tight end the way they're. Then Hawkinson would be perfect on the Dolphins.
Pretty much, yeah.
They don't use the tight end,
but I mean,
ever.
They just drafted Gesicki.
They don't use him. They don't use him.
Here's the only one that I kind of had a question with: Philly, Zach Ertz. Is he? Would you say he's an athletic tight end, or was he just
he's an athletic tight end,
productive tight end, because he was
athletic and
thrown
productive
to a ton this year.
Athletic and productive. He's thrown to a lot. He's been thrown to a lot even before this year. Obviously, this year was a lot, but I'm almost feeling like there's not too many teams these days where the tight end isn't fully involved in some way. Of course, this past year we saw when we're doing the fantasy podcast, what's your fantasy? There were a lot of issues with tight ends going down, and then it was at the point of, well, what are you going to do? Because so many tight ends have now really been called upon to be wide receivers and be a big play threat as well as everything else. So I think that I really like Noah Fant. I think that there's a lot of potential with him still. I'm excited to see what he does at the next level.
The other guy I will say that I'm interested to see if he's at the combine, because I don't know for sure. Someone in the comment section help me out. But if Irv Smith Jr., the tight end from Bama, he's a guy that could sneak up for me, because he's a guy that I saw in Todd McShay's big board. It was funny because neither McShay or Kiper had Fant as the number one tight end. McShay had Irv Smith. Mel Kiper had Hawkinson. Obviously, I didn't have a tight end in my big board. They would have been in this range if I did. And then you had Noah Fant as your number one tight end coming into this big board. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section about our 16 through 25. Also, what do you think about the running backs? What do you think about these lower, I'm going to call them tier 2 type of quarterbacks, because tier 1 is going to be Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins. And then what do you think about the tight ends, mainly Hawkinson and Fant? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section.